It is not outside the possibility to say, we cannot rebuild this. This is going to cost multi-trillions, that's with a T, of dollars, and take decades. Could they put it as a no human habitation zone for rewilding, and that is going to be the first flag in the ground of this is the first rewilding project in America? Is this a try to set up a zone in a section of a state where no humans will be allowed back in there? We've seen these maps. Look for that red and the yellow map.
Welcome, Eagles, to another edition of Tradcat Night Special Guest Exclusive. Folks, we're finishing up strong with one of my favorite shows to do every month with David Dubine of Adapt 2030. My goodness, is there an awful lot to talk about. All the latest Earth changes, sky phenomena, apocalyptic signs, maybe a little prepping advice, too, by the time we're done. We always like to do that with David. And David, thanks so much for joining us. And man, love doing these shows. Appreciate all your insights. I'm curious your take on Hurricane Helene. And of course, we had Milton following suit. And the overall point to me is what's happening organically with space. Again, there's a whole theory of Planet X, or is it just the sun? Okay, let's push that aside for a second. But we all know that there is such a thing as HARP or scalar. But I think you want to present the case today that might not be as much as a factor as we're indicating. I do know that their plan is to destroy coastlines. They want people off of coastlines and to move people into smart cities. Tampa was a smart city, and some of these other cities that were in and around the affected areas there in Florida are smart cities. Bill Gates has got his hand in that Tampa Moves project, Phoenix 2.0, I think it was called. And again, to displace people, purposely displace people and get them moved into smart cities. But break it all down for us. How did your area hold up? Samantha Wiesing's from Tennessee herself. She did okay. How did you hold up?
Yeah, a lot of damage was north of us. About 35 minutes north is where the line was driving. So everything, we just had a lot of big trees fall down on the property here. Didn't get too much flooding. I mean, there was still lots of rain, but over the year prior to this, we had the most rain that had fallen in a single evening of 6.5 inches in one evening, and that broke the 1880 record. So after that flood, I was able to see what flooded. And then after that, bump up my flood control on the property here, especially around the barn, and making sure there's a way for water to go around the house versus pooling where it was. And but if it would have been more than that, it probably would have overwhelmed. Like some of those places in North Carolina got 30 inches. 6 inches is a lot, but 5 times more than that in a single evening. I don't care what you put out to try to control the flooding. And you know, that Phoenix 2.0, I'm gonna split a hair with you. That thing was 15 years old. So that study and all that stuff about Phoenix 2.0, they didn't do that like last year and try to run a simulation 2 years ago. That thing was put out like 15 years ago. In like the 2007 era, something like this. Yeah, that's a really old one. A lot of people grasping onto it, trying to connect dots that just aren't there. And this is the whole thing that I have been noticing, that everybody is jumping on any bandwagon that they can because they're so angsty that whatever's going on in our world right now, everybody's latching on to anything and everything to explain away the crazy weather madness that's happening. Because I don't know if it's a psychological thing where people need to put a causation to it, so they're just making causations out of thin air, literally, just trying to make something so there's something to hold on to for some belief system that it's the government doing all this versus natural changes. Because I'm telling you, if you understand we're in a cycle that is a natural cycle, and then there's really very little humanity can do to stop the continuing amplification and wiping out of our crops, our infrastructure, our economy from amplified weather fronts and storms and just extremes, droughts, floods, whatever form that takes. It is just at the beginning of the amplification. And I don't know if people are trying to do something in their mind to try to give themselves more safety, like, we can stop it, it's the government, versus being, this is a natural cycle, the sun's driving this thing. You don't have a chance of slowing it down.
Elon Musk warns if Trump is not elected, this will be the last election. And Trump warns a Kamala win could lead to a 1929-style crash. Costco's seen double-digit growth in gold sales as gold hits all-time highs. Goldman Sachs raised their target $2,900 an ounce by early 2025. Silver outperformed gold, up In 2024, 32%. That's an 11-year high. And JP Morgan forecasts silver to hit $36 an ounce in early 2025. As we see, this is the most contested election in history next month. Why wait? Call the Proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. And Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. And you may qualify for the No Fee for Life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call, 888-546-7020 for your free investor guide today. And also Patriot Gold Group, rated Consumer Affairs top gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. That's 888-546-7020. And now on with the video.
I just don't know why everybody's latching on to some of these far-fetched ideas. But every single event coming now has to be geoengineering. It has to be weather modification. It has to be this. It has to be that. Can there be anything natural that is just growing because of more moisture in the atmosphere and bending and decreasing magnetic field on our planet, along with increased solar activity, driving more electricity into the face of our planet down the poles? It's amplifying all these events. Does everybody have to come up to as a cloud seeding program that it can't be natural variability and magnetic changes, electromagnetic differential happening on the planet? Is that terrifying for everybody that they have to go? It's always weather modification. This is where I kind of get bent into the thing. Like, y'all got to stop out there and look at other causations versus every single time somebody farts in the wind, oh, that was government modified. You know, it's got to stop. This is getting to the point of being absolutely ridiculous right now.
Yeah, I've always said the bigger picture is something, bigger out there, dealing with either something in our solar system or the sun itself or something along those lines. We do know geoengineering exists. I mean, that's been declassified. But what would you say to someone like Dane? Dane actually stopped doing my show because that actually was my opinion. Like, the bigger picture is what you and I would believe, and he stopped doing my show years ago because he's just 100% geoengineering. Have you ever interviewed him or talked to him? Does he avoid you because you don't say everything's geoengineering too? I'm curious because he avoids me like the plague now.
You know, I've had many of people who know him, and I've asked for personal favors for them to reach out to Dane personally and say, David would like to talk to you. But because I don't believe that everything in the Arctic is geoengineered, that I believe in, these longer term solar cycles drive electromagnetic field changes which would, for you and I on a just easy basis to understand, there's either more, less electricity coming down those magnetic lines that connect from our planet back to the sun. And more electricity coming in heats things, and less electricity cools things. So if you're going to talk about ice ages, our sun turns off. So there's way less vibration, there's way less movement, there's way less heat, and then you got the inverse. If you looked at Dr. Roy Spencer's site over last month at University of Alabama, Huntsville, on the global temperatures on the satellite lower troposphere, massive spike in heat. But then if you look over at CISLO and take a look at the sunspot correlation, 100% match. Like massive increases in solar activity, sunspots, X-flares, just ridiculous amounts of output from our sun that was not forecast by anybody. Everybody got it wrong this solar cycle, including me. I was calling it going less sunspots, going cooler for the grand solar minimum. A lot of other well-renowned solar forecasters, physicists, astrophysicists, whatever you like to term them as, they all got it wrong too, because they were way under the count. Like something has gone awry in the sun. But if you were looking at some sort of strange change coming in, I was saying that the strange change is going to cause massive cooling on the planet, reduce our crop yields, and then it's going to upset society. So I was looking for a change, but I think I got it wrong in this solar cycle, that the same change seems to be occurring and going to begin here. Now, a lot of space agencies are coming clean, going, oh yeah, solar cycle 26 is just going to drop out. Sunspot activity is going to go to near zero in the next solar cycle after we come off this one. Yeah. But I encourage everybody, look at CISLO and then match it up with University of Alabama, Huntsville global lower tropospheric temperatures, and you will just be jaw dropped in the back of your chair. You'll be like, no, how can nobody see this?
I want you to give us an update to the comet that I think you saw that you've seen here in recent times. It's the Ohio Valley, and I mean, I guess it depends on where you are in the Ohio Valley, but it's pretty nasty with the cloud activity right now. So I don't think I'm going to be able to catch it. But before we even do that, do you think with the narrative of like HARP and Scalar and all that, do you think that's something that the government wants to have out there and perpetuate? I mean, you saw the aftermath of Hurricane Helene.
I will say with the massive amount of devastation up there, they are going to have to rebuild half of North Carolina from the ground up. There are no roadbeds left to even build or resurface a road on. It's not like you're going to go in and resurface. It's gone. The rivers changed, the streams changed, everything has changed so much course that where there were once neighborhoods and roads, that's literally the middle of the river now. So we're not talking about rebuilding anything. We are talking about from the ground up surveying to put a roadbed in, to actually put a surface on a newly constructed, brand new, from the ground up construction. And that would include all the water piping, sewage, conduits, anything. Pipes were absolutely just ferociously ripped out from these torrents of water. You know, there might be smidgens and bits left that weren't damaged, but overall the entire system has been wiped out and washed away. Same with the electrical. There was a huge amount of communication down because the towers were flash flooded off the hills in mudslides. So I think it was more than 24 mobile phone towers literally were washed away. They don't exist anymore. They was washed off the hills. Start to get into this type of, okay, they got to rewire the entire place. And almost all the telephone poles that at least I saw in there, every image, are either bent slightly, off straight, off that vertical position, or they were snapped, or they were washed away. So when you look at this and you go, all right, they're going to have to literally rebuild part of a state. In Tennessee, too, in the eastern quadrant out here, when you get up toward Newport and that sort of area. Now, maybe Tennessee could take care of it because it's only that edge of the state. We're talking about North Carolina. We're talking about half of a state. So it is not outside the possibility to say, we cannot rebuild this. This is going to cost multi-trillions, that's with a T, of dollars, and take decades, or a decade plus, on a Manhattan-style project with all road construction crews descending onto this state. Could they put it as a no human habitation zone for rewilding, and that is going to be the first flag in the ground of this is the first rewilding project in America that no humans are allowed in these zones anymore, and we're going to start it and we confiscate the land. There's been a lot of lands confiscation, eminent domain from the U.S. government, I will admit that. But is this a try to set up a zone in a section of a state where no humans will be allowed back in there? And this will be the first of what we will see as the gameplay for in these natural areas. We've seen these maps. Look for that red and the yellow map where there's little slivers of corridors for humans to live, but the rest of it's pretty much been rewilded. That's exactly what they want to do. And look for them to start there first.
Yeah, no, all very interesting. Talk to us about this comet that, as long as the sky is clear, I think most people can see now. But yeah, the latest sky phenomenon, Aurora Borealis is happening, second moon in the sky, close passing asteroids over the past month. What some people are claiming is the Star of Jacob up in the sky now, which I have indicated this could be a clear-cut case sign that the Antichrist could be right around the corner with all these earth changes about to happen. I mean, what's the big takeaway here? You mentioned at the beginning of the year, October was going to be very spicy, and it sure is picking up speed, right? I mean, October's been pretty dicey already. We still got a few more weeks to go here, but what kind of stands out to you, and what do we make of this comet that is now visible?
Well, I haven't heard the Star of Jacob unless it's the supernova, the Aurora Borealis.
Yeah. Yeah, the TCBR.
Yeah, TCBR. Okay, that one's on about an 80-year period, as far as I know. But again, that validates the electric universe theory, where that star is stuck at a Z-pinch, and those double layers of plasma that control that current inflow onto the poles seem to collapse on an 80-year event, which sends off that micronova, and then that double layer of plasma reestablishes itself above the north and the south pole there until it overcompensates and the capacitor blows out and that current flow comes in and whoosh, you get it. Now ours is on a 100,000-year pattern. That one's like on an 80th-year pattern. Same but different, same rules apply, electric universe, if you can understand that, plasma flows. This sort of electric currents through space, that explains that one really easily, but on a much shorter time frame than we're used to into our ice ages and out of them again. But traditions around the world really don't look very highly at comets because generally they bring disaster and illness with them. And, the Chinese are absolutely no fan of comets. They always, every time they see it, they have full diagrams of each kind of a tail that a comet would have and what kind of disaster you could expect by the tail formation or configuration. I believe we're going to be seeing a lot more meteorite and fireballs and meteors in our skies for sure. We're going through debris regions dense to space. We got all this gravitational welling happening with the planets in this squaring formation. This is the biggest comet we've seen since Hale-Bopp. And how does the psyche really work with humanity here?
That's interesting. I've had even a few of my followers say that in recent times they felt like sort of like an angst or an inner anxiety, and that's something I didn't consider considering this comet's out there and how it actually affects us.
Well, I don't know if it's electrical. Sorry, academic study, but I don't know if it's electrical or if it's just they're seeing it and it's spooking them because that's literally in our DNA. When you see comets, you run for the hills.
I'm saying that they're not even aware that this comet is here. They feel like they're extra anxious and they kind of can't put their finger on it, or they feel, I don't know if I want to use the word angry. I talked to a few people behind the scenes the other day. They said they're blowing up on small issues that like wouldn't normally happen before. And I know I've done shows with can't remember if it was with Ben, but like Marshall Masters and some other folks, and we tried talking about the effects upon a human as either a comet is passing or a planet-sized comet or whatever might be rolling through. Maybe it's even a mini solar system. Who the heck knows? But just affecting us. We talk about like the Earth and the environment. From Catholic prophecy, you can see that it's definitely something out there, right? Especially with the 3 days of darkness prophecy, because my goodness, it's like everything is sort of happening at once. And, even thunders will be destroying cities and causing large sinkholes. Like that's crazy to even think about, because we just went through a nasty thunderstorm. It was like last week that you could feel it in your feet, and that'll get the hair raising up on the back of your head to think that like whole cities could be annihilated from thunders is pretty nerve-wracking. But I don't know, just your thoughts on that area. I don't know if we've ever discussed that before with like something like a comet passing.
No, never have. But, it's interesting you mentioned that. Just popped a thought in my head here. The World Economic Forum, Klaus, remember he said we are entering an angrier world. Well, see, that kind of elite would understand the cycles better than most because they would have, access to information that's not generally available to, I would say, 99.9% of the public in terms of historical records stretching back 500 or further back that are really very detailed records. What they give us in the museums is literally just a fraction of 1% of what's really stored in these museums. You have to realize that in your average museum, like 95 to 99% of everything in the museum is not on display. So if you take it that direction, what if they knew a collapsing magnetic field coming into this time would create perceptual changes in the human domain, and that would result in higher anger and angst, as well as being able to see through the veil, for a better term, on like how you decode this reality in front of you might change and what you see and perceive and how you perceive it. So, that anger fits kind of right in there. The sinkhole thing is interesting for me because I want everybody out there to look at Turkey, because Turkey seems to have this. I just was watching an article. It's the first time for me to understand this too. I was up on Telegram and somebody was showing some big sinkholes in Turkey, and I was like, man, those are big. Because I'd seen something like that in Siberia a few years back. These like big ones. They seem like discharge holes or something. And they go, this is the 2,500th one that we found. And I was like, what? You got 2,500 of these same sinkholes that have been occurring in Turkey in the last, several years? And I was like, what? So there are areas on the planet that seem to be more electromagnetically sensitive and showing responses in the Earth's crust than other areas.
And as a result of, like you said, we're going to have so much happening as a result of this one. And I'm sure there's going to be more to come. Scripture makes mention of wormwood. There's also another one mentioned in a Catholic prophecy, which really is going to do far more damage than something like the one. What is this one called, by the way? We got the initials or the acronym for this one that's passing by right now. I know I mentioned it briefly. Atlas, that's it.
The Comet Atlas, and that's the one you can find on the Sky Lives to see exactly where it is, the brightness. It will be visible for the next 2 weeks. For those of you need to look directly west into the setting sun, and after the sun sets, probably 30 minutes or just barely after it gets dark, like over this next week, you can go a good hour, 2 hours after sunset and see it because it's going to keep rising in the sky.
Now, talk to us about your latest video here. Why is so much food disappearing? Again, I have several thoughts that come into my head, but without watching this video, what did you get into there? Are we talking like taking out agricultural air? Like what were you discussing in that video?
That you need to be on a chicken registry now in the UK. So if you even own one bird, you have to register on their database of owning a chicken. Now, what's funny is so many people, went to their supermarket, bought a chicken, and then registered their cooked chickens on it. They even went to McDonald's and started registering individual chicken nuggets. So it crashed the system. So they're like, you have to do it by paper. And everybody's like, no, it's a digital thing because I'd sent it by mail, but my mail's lost. You didn't get my application. So all these people are calling in going, I sent you my application, but you didn't get it. Just trying to break the system again and try to just shut the thing down, which is good.
Hey, welcome to 2024. Right. And I don't know if I can make a suggestion, maybe like a little Halloween costume for them, maybe turn your chicken into a cat or something. So when they show up and be like, no, that's just Roger, my cat, or make it look like something else.
My chicken identifies as a cat. I wasn't going to register as a chicken. How dare you? Oh, wait, one more. Eric, can I throw in one more? The thing about that food, the third part of that story on that video was, so in Australia, the local fruit growers, and some of them, have been there for 100 years with their orchards or into all these co-ops and everything that buy for them and then sell on to the supermarkets. Suddenly the supermarket just said, no, we don't need your peaches anymore or your pears. So they cut the pear orders 60%, and that's across Australia. And then they cut the peach orders 40%. So we don't need your peaches. People are worried about saving money, so we don't need your peaches. And then they bought it from China and South Africa and shipped it on a boat to get it into Australia to undercut the local growers. And then they have the audacity to blame the price-conscious consumer as the problem. I'm like, wait, that's not the problem. Your central banking policies are the problem. And that was the whole thing about it. And I'd seen the same thing in British Columbia where the co-op growers, this was apples, again, they just said, no, we don't need any more of your apples. And it was like 2 weeks before harvest season, so everybody brought on extra help. And they're like, no, we don't need your apples because we're going to get them all from overseas now. But they didn't tell anybody until 2 weeks before the harvest began.
And then, what happened since they pushed this port strike thing back? And there were some citrus items, I think bananas or whatnot, they said might be short if that strike was going to continue on. But I think it's going to resurrect itself back January the 15th. So, like you're saying, it's not necessarily a supply thing right now. But what if we get to that situation where it's a full-blown strike and whatever's going to happen with the port strikes come January 15th? And I'm expecting I'm preparing for the worst there, and we can't get stuff in via that route. It almost seems like it doesn't really matter if it's supply or demand. Like people aren't going to be able to get their products. And again, all the more reason to make sure that you're doing this doing this on your own, hydroponics inside, and make sure you got your seeds. Go out in the forest somewhere and hide. I don't know. I wouldn't be relying upon the supply chain here in the next 6 months to a year,
or ever,
really, yeah, even beyond that.
Well, we'll say the same thing 6 months from now. I think really just more that supply chain thing was just a test to see could they drive everybody out of fear to run into the supermarket and gobble stuff up again. And the same morons that bought a cart full of toilet paper are the same morons that bought a cart of toilet paper this time again. It's weird. You see the same images, and I could have actually spliced those side by side of the COVID buying, of the port strike buying, and you really, without putting dates on them, you wouldn't know which one was which one. The same fear mechanism pushed the same people to buy the same items again en masse.
What drives that fear when you sit and think about it psychological? Because you would think, okay, if we're possibly talking about food shortages, and again, with the port strike, wasn't necessary that, or there was elements of it. Like, why wasn't there hoarding of the stuff that they said was going to be short? Certainly wasn't toilet paper. Why do we always run to our rear ends, David, and not our mouths? When it comes to the stuff, if you think about it, it's so weird to think about. Why is everyone always rushing out to get toilet paper? Are we scared of skid marks or something instead of eating? Like, what's going on here?
Again, I really believe it was a psychological operation to gather more data on what kind of people would buy what items. Because if they did it twice and they're the repeat buyers on a stress situation or like a psychological input, this many people are going to buy rice, this many people are going to buy spaghetti, this many people are going to buy tinned cans of fish or whatever. And then this percentage of the population is going to run to toilet paper, this percentage is going to run to junk food. So they can probably already see who's going to survive based on what they're buying, and that, already like trying to suss out who's going to be the most prepared. Because you can buy all the junk food you want, you're going to get no calories, you're going to get super hungry, have no energy. But somebody who's buying rice, beans, that sort of like heavier, dense protein stuff, they're the ones who know what they're doing.
And that actually leads me to the last tier here before we let you go. I know you got to get going here in a minute. Prepping advice for the month. Again, I keep telling folks this is exactly what I said on the current event show that I did last night. Rice, beans, all the basics. Water too. Now here's an interesting one for you, Dave. It was actually brought to my attention by a Tradcat Night member. I certainly am familiar with dehumidification and dehumidifiers, but there actually is what's called atmospheric like water generators, AWGs. I'm not sure if you looked into them. I've been checking it out now for a few weeks and making sure that like enough people were solid on it that have actually used it. You know what I mean? Like nothing too experimental or whatever. But as long as you're not in a dry area and you have like humidity of at least 55%, depending on what model you get, you can kind of just cook out of your air, anywhere between a gallon to 10 gallons, depending upon like how much you want to spend. And if we know there's going to be water shortages or something along those lines, it's something to consider. Just wanted to get your thoughts, your feedback, as I'm kind of like looking at that right now. I know some people claim it's a gimmick, other people really swear by it. What's your thoughts on those, and any other prepping advice you got for the month?
Well, my fallback would definitely be life straws and other types of like well-known water purification gear. But that does sound interesting. I've seen some stuff done with that, and the videos I've watched, they're replicating plants. They're replicating surfaces of plants, surfaces of leaves, surfaces of stems and barks on how to get that, but then they bring it into the modern manufacturing on different materials, but they're replicating nature on the way nature captures water. Now, I don't know the validity of it or how efficient they are, or how it works with the electricity and that sort of thing, but I know the tech's been experimented on for quite some time. Back to nature again.
And most of these models, it's like a 12-step filtration system too, with like UV lighting, and to like make sure there's no bacteria, no mold. And like I said, with the ones I've seen online with the reviews, and they don't look like paid reviews or whatnot. They look like real people or whatnot. Most people seem to be very pleasantly surprised by it, to be the type of thing. So I might give it a go with that as sort of like a last resort. That's not a first line of defense for me. It'd be like a last line of defense for me. But if you didn't have any way of capturing water, in those months where you got humidity up, you could produce, a decent amount, gallons of water in your own home without having to have to leave. So something to look into.
Yeah, and also one last thing, pet food and pet supplies. You're really going to need to take care of your pets, especially if you have dogs that are going to help you watch your property. Like, not a lot of people think about that, but they're going to be hungry too. And if you got limited food, we better stock that stuff up first. You need them for your security. They're better than an alarm system, I'll tell you that for sure.
The dental sticks too, stuff for dental, make sure, the manicure and stuff, make sure you got all the implements that you would need, any of the grooming stuff, like all of it, not just food, but take care of your pets. I'm right there with you for sure.